Incredible baby deer asks for help. Discover the touching rescue of a buck's trapped antlers. Emily sat quietly in her small clinic, the hum of distant machinery creating a backdrop to her racing thoughts. The scent of antiseptics mixed with the earthy tones of the countryside, yet her heart felt heavy. She leaned back in her chair, a worn photo of her grandfather perched on her desk. His rugged hands, weathered from years spent in the wild, echoed the words he had always shared. Stand up for those without a voice, a mantra etched in her memory. Yet here she was, feeling more like an imposter than an advocate, grappling with the shadow of doubt cloaking her resolve. In the weeks leading up to this moment, Emily had buried herself in routine checkups and vaccine schedules for the community's pets. The animals, cats, dogs, even the occasional goat, were all she'd ever aimed to help, but a persistent ache for the wildlife she once dreamed of rescuing gnawed at her. A languid afternoon was the perfect time for reflection, yet it only amplified the yearning deep within her. What had happened to her mission of saving the voiceless? Suddenly, a call from a local farmer interrupted her reverie. "You ought to see this, Emily," he urged, urgency threading his voice. And there it was, a young buck caught in a cruel embrace of barbed wire, the beauty of its antlers marred by pain. Emily's heart dropped. The sight sparked something primal within her. Instinctively, she remembered her grandfather's teachings, and the weight of responsibility settled heavy on her shoulders. But with her empathy came fear. A cacophony of voices ricocheted in her mind, warning her of potential backlash from the community. Even her own friends had begun to question the need for intervention. Some insisted that wildlife should fend for itself. Did they truly believe that leaving it to struggle was the right thing? She felt the pressure mount as her heart pounded with frustration. How could she convince them this young buck deserved help without overstepping her bounds? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the days melted into a blur, Emily's resolve was tested more than ever. Each attempt at rescue led to horrifying complications. The buck grew weaker, and townsfolk became more hostile. Their skepticism swirled like a storm around her, leaving her stranded in a sea of doubt. Her every move felt scrutinized. Self-questioning gnawed at her. What if her actions were misguided? Was she putting her career on the line for a fleeting hope? The pressure wrapped around her like a vice, squeezing out clarity and confidence. Then, unexpectedly, Charlie appeared. Her grandfather's old mentor brought with him a glimmer of wisdom buried beneath age and gruffness. "Listen, Emily," he said, grounding her. "You're not overstepping. You're doing what any compassionate person would do. It's your choice to act." His words ignited determination, yet the layers of responsibility overwhelmed her. Would that determination be enough? The buck was still trapped, its fate uncertain. Just when Emily believed a breakthrough was looming, the unforeseen occurred. A storm rolled in, wreaking havoc on the wire while sending panic through her chest. In that moment, she stood poised before the threshold of choice. Her heart screamed to save the buck, yet the risks felt insurmountable. Was her fight for the voiceless worth losing everything? The questions consumed her as the storm raged on, leaving Emily teetering on the edge of despair, her mission and identity hanging by a thread. The storm bore down fiercely, blurring the lines between the pressing rain and Emily's own tumultuous thoughts. Each raindrop struck like a reminder of the urgency pulsating through her veins. She was standing at a crossroads where action and inaction weighed equally heavy. Adrenaline fueled her body, arguing against the caveat of caution whispering in her ear. Struggling internally, she felt the storm was a catalyst propelling her toward a decision that could alter the very fabric of her professional identity. In the depths of her mind, Emily grappled with the ramifications. She envisioned the jeers from local naysayers, recalling their doubts about her capabilities. They often voiced their concern in hushed tones. Her choice to prioritize wildlife care over conventional clinic practices was seen as reckless by many. "You can't save every animal," they would say with condescension. Yet, staring into the tempest, she understood that saving one animal could unravel the very essence of her existence. This buck's suffering resonated with her own fears of being trapped, just like the deer. Compelled by instinct, Emily rushed toward the farm, her boots splashing through muddy water. Each step was a declaration of her commitment, the growing tempest behind her urging her forward. As she neared the buck's last known location, she steeled herself against the roiling uncertainty. She had the knowledge and the training, but did she possess the strength of will to overcome the surrounding skepticism and act on it? Reaching the enclosure, the sight of the young buck and its desperate struggle twisted her stomach. The barbed wire was a cruel contrast to its gentle form, each twist and turn of the metal digging into the soft flesh of its antlers. Her heart raced as she assessed the situation. The storm clouds churned above like her own doubts, swirling with threat and chaos. Could she truly get close enough to help without putting herself at risk? Drawing a deep breath, Emily steadied her hands and summoned the skills that had once buoyed her through countless veterinary emergencies. This wasn't just about knowledge. It was about heart, about the unrelenting urge to stand for those unable to stand for themselves. She started by calling out softly to the buck, hoping to calm it, acknowledging its fear as if it mirrored her own. It was an instinctive move. She understood now, fully, the connection formed between confidant and fragile being. But the noise of the storm closed in on her, the howling wind a reminder of the stakes involved. At that moment, as the buck thrashed against the wire, Emily confronted the latent trepidation about her choices. Was this the moment she embraced her true calling, reclaiming the mantle her grandfather had placed upon her, or was it a painful misstep into the unknown? With determination surging through her, she stepped forward. Closer now, she felt the invigorating rush of purpose displace the doubts that had plagued her. Each movement became a dance of empathy and urgency, an internal symphony orchestrating all the lessons learned over her academic career now preparing to bear fruit. But just as she began to devise a plan, a sharp clap of thunder cracked through the air, echoing in her ears like a call to arms. It was time to confront not just the storm outside, but the one brewing within her. The moment had arrived. She must lean into her fear, face the backlash and barriers ahead, and choose to act. The buck thrashed again, and she could feel the weight of every life she sought to save pressed against her chest. In this tension, Emily faltered for a breath, standing at the precipice of her decision. Would she risk everything for one chance at freedom? As she made the choice to move forward, the winds of change surged around her, a tangible force ready to meet her resolve. Embracing her vulnerabilities, she readied herself to make a critical difference. The storm, both outside and inside, seemed to amplify the weight of her actions, and she was ready to face whatever came next. Suddenly, from behind her, a voice pierced through the storm, calling out her name. Emily turned, her heart racing as the unmistakable outline of someone advanced toward her. She felt a twinge of apprehension, but couldn't afford to turn back now. The fear of the unknown clashed with a sudden surge of urgency. Who was here at such a tumultuous moment, and what did it signify for her burgeoning mission? The voice came closer, cutting through the cacophony of rain and thunder, and Emily's stomach knotted. If this was someone criticizing her decision, she wouldn't have the capacity to stay calm. But no, she recognized the voice. It was Matthew, her closest confidant from veterinary school, a steadfast ally who often defied the criticism of others regarding her unconventional choices. "Emily!" he shouted again, urgency lacing his tone. She took a moment, swallowing the storm of emotions brewing inside her, then turned as the dark outline of Matthew emerged, water beating on his forehead as he battled his own trepidation in the relentless storm. "Matthew, what are you doing here?" Her voice wavered but was resolute, echoing her purpose in the chaos. The storm outside raged, but inside her, a new resolve began to unfurl. "I came to find you. I heard about the buck." He gestured toward the frantic creature behind the barbed wire. "I know you can help it, but first, let's assess the situation together. You're not alone in this." There it was. The weight of her fears began to lighten. With Matthew's presence beside her, she could confront this challenge without the suffocating sense of isolation. He shined a flashlight on the buck, illuminating its panicked eyes, and Emily felt a surge of renewed purpose flood her veins. She initiated a quick assessment of the buck's condition, focusing hard despite the distractions. The frantic creature's snorting sent adrenaline coursing through her, forcing her to confront the visceral truth. She had never tried to save a wild animal in this way before. Her experience had been with domestic animals, shielded in the remnants of the familiar and safe. But each doubt she harbored melted in the light of Matthew's unwavering faith in her capabilities. "We need to calm it first," she instructed, her voice steadier now. "I want you to hold the flashlight steady while I get closer. Try to keep the light focused on its eyes to soothe it." The storm wasn't just an external factor. It echoed the tumult of Emily's internal struggles, and in this precise moment, she aimed to harness that chaos into something purposeful. As she inched closer, every heartbeat reverberated with the weight of what was at stake. "You can do this," she whispered to herself. But deep inside, the question still lingered. Was she truly equipped to embrace this pivotal moment? Emily carefully approached the buck, hands outstretched to convey peace. In doing so, she felt the moral weight of her actions pressing upon her. This was a critical test of her professional identity, standing right on the edge of what was safe and understood. Could she become a bridge between the wildness of nature and the compassion she had been nurtured to express? Just then, another crack of thunder reverberated in the distance, distracting the buck momentarily. Emily seized the moment, her heart pounding as she reached one hand into the tangled wire, feeling the cool metal biting against her skin. With steady determination, she began to work to free the animal, her thoughts racing with strategies and the undeniable fear of failing this vulnerable soul. "Matthew, keep talking to it. Focus on keeping it calm," she urged. The sound of his voice, carrying warmth and encouragement, echoed against her resolve as she felt the weight of the barbed wire shift under her careful maneuvers. But as she loosened the wire, a sudden surge of energy from the buck caught her off guard. It reared back sharply, and for a moment, her heart stopped. The precarious connection teetered on the edge of disaster. Emily needed to remind herself of the resolve that brought her here. Facing the downpour, the storm, and the naysayers, she had to believe that her choice mattered, that this act wouldn't just save the buck, but could ignite a deeper transformation within her. This was it. The defining moment she feared had arrived. Just as she began to regain her focus, a voice called out from the shadows above the storm sounds, different from Matthew's, strident and unforgiving, echoing Emily's deepest insecurities. "What are you doing? You'll never save it." Emily's heart raced anew, and the weight of the confrontational voice forced her to confront the reality of her choices in this chaotic environment. Would she be able to hold her ground against this new challenge? As the storm raged around them, and the buck's life trembled in the balance, Emily realized the time had come to confront not only the fears embodied in that voice, but a far greater confrontation within her own soul. The thunder rolled like an ominous drum, drowning out the unsettling echo of doubt that followed that harsh voice. Emily's fingers grasped the wire tighter, the cold metal a stark reminder of her resolve, not just for the buck, but for herself. She had been built for this moment, or so she tried to convince herself. "Don't listen to it," Matthew urged, his presence behind her a beacon. Even lost in the storm, Emily could sense the calmness emanating from him, grounding her swirling thoughts. She took a deep breath, focusing on the buck, its wild gaze flickering between panic and resignation. In that brief moment, Emily employed the small strategies she had learned over the years. She considered the subtle cues of animal behavior, recalling the countless hours spent observing both domestic pets and wildlife during internships. "If I can soothe animals accustomed to human touch," she mused, "I can at least attempt to reach one unused to it." With gentle determination, she spoke softly to the buck. Her voice was steady, forcing it to acknowledge her presence amidst the storm. "You're okay. We're going to help you." It was a strange juxtaposition, where outside raindrops combined with her hopes, each word virtually overshadowed by nature's fury. As she inched closer again, sweeping aside the barbed wire with deliberation, she felt an almost primal connection surge inside her. This was not just about a physical rescue. It was an invocation of her commitment to her vocation. She wasn't merely a veterinarian for domestic animals. She was a protector of life. That idea nagged at her anxieties and began to carve out new channels of confidence within. "You've got this," whispered Matthew, somehow sensing the shifts in her pulse and breathing. With each word, she could feel the weight of her fears lighten. There they were, her past decisions, the doubts of her colleagues, and the desperation of animals like this buck, all merging in one electrifying moment. She deepened her breath, the rain mingling with sweat, and dove headfirst into the task. Another daunting thunderclap resonated above, but this time she took it as a cue to fortify her resolve. As she carefully manipulated the wires, she recalled her early days at veterinary school. The criticism had stung then. Rumors of her unconventional techniques and empathetic approaches followed her like shadows. As she lifted her hands and directed her focus, she couldn't help but feel the fire of her conviction. How many times had she doubted herself? How many lives had she allowed to slip by, tethered by her fear of failure? Suddenly, the buck surged backward again, panic coursing through its frame, sending vibrations through the wire and forcing Emily's grip to slacken. "Calm down," she implored, both to the animal and herself. Each reflection of her own apprehension echoed, weaving itself into the fabric of her consciousness. "You are enough," she stated, firm yet urgent. The voices, both supportive and hostile, competed in her head. She wanted to silence them but realized they had become part of her internal landscape, urging her to embrace the struggle. "Matthew, can you come here?" she called, her mind racing through tactical equations. While he approached, she formulated a plan. "I need you to guide its movements. I'll focus on freeing the last of the wire." He nodded, positioning himself strategically to create a comforting barrier around the buck. As Emily leaned closer again, she felt that fateful connection. This creature, trapped by a world it didn't understand yet, still hopeful enough to fight. The shadows of her own doubts whispered louder now, stinging her heart, but she had ignited something within her. A flicker of resolve that even the storm couldn't quell. Guided by a sense of purpose and unwavering support from Matthew, she was ready to confront the buck's instinctual fears and her own deeply rooted uncertainties. But just as she grasped the last of the wire, the storm shifted. In the distance, a cry echoed, a cry that sounded like her own voice, resonating through layers of fear and expectation. Would this rescue materialize into a new beginning for both her and the buck, or would it become a vivid representation of every failure she feared? Her heart raced again as she wondered whether she'd emerge not just as a rescuer, but as someone reborn. And before her could act on the impulse, she found herself questioning whether she would summon the courage for whatever awaited her in the final stretch to freedom. Emily's heart thundered in her chest, synchronizing with the mighty storm. Her world narrowed to the buck standing before her, adorned in fear but also a spirit that resonated with her resolute heartbeat. Every moment stretched like an eternity as she gauged the gaps in the wire, her only barrier to freeing the animal caged within its own panic. "Focus," she muttered under her breath, a mantra against both the storm and her mounting fear. This was not a fight against the elements. It was a dialogue between trust and instinct. Watching the creature's wide eyes flicker between fear of her and the safety she represented, she resolved to meet that fear with her own spirited calmness. As soon as Emily resumed her effort to untangle the wire, an instinct sparked within her. "This isn't about controlling it. I need to join its rhythm," she thought. Responding to the animal's movements, she allowed her hands to move fluidly, mirroring its jerks while keeping her voice soft. "Just breathe. We're in this together." The seconds felt like a lifetime, her anxiety clawing at her as she danced on the brink of uncertainty, questioning every step. What if her methods failed? What if the backlash sent them spiraling back into chaos? Each fear gnawed at her, but as the buck began to settle, she sensed the tide turning. Her voice steadied, her resolve crystallized. As Matthew guided the buck with gentle hands, Emily was reminded of the profound impact of collaboration. There was magic in their synchronized efforts, an acknowledgement of strength they both brought to the table. A spark ignited in her mind. Perhaps the voices that haunted her weren't entirely critics, but part of a composite reflection of her personal battles, urging her to confront what lay beneath her achievements and failures. Let go of the past, Emily. Redirect that energy. The thought came unbidden, fueling her determination. Inspired by her growing realization, she shifted her perspective, seeing each doubt as energy to be transformed into fierce determination. With a few deft movements, she managed to ease the last bit of wire away, and her breath caught as the buck stood still, almost in a state of disbelief. In that moment, just as the wires finally fell away and the buck stood free, Emily felt a swell of triumph. It wasn't about saving the deer. It was about confronting her own insecurities, facing the doubts of her past, and realizing that vulnerability could lead to profound strength. Suddenly, the biggest storm wasn't the one outside, but the one she had battled within herself. "You did it!" Matthew exclaimed, eyes wide with awe, as the buck took a hesitant step forward. The connection between all three of them, Emily, the buck, and the storm, felt palpable. This moment stitched the fabric of her professional identity, reinforcing that protection and healing transcended the conventional boundaries of her practice. But as liberation danced triumphantly in her chest, another thought grounded it. The world outside her immediate victory was still tumultuous. Would she rise to embrace the challenges ahead, buoyed by this experience, or would she retreat, nursing the lingering doubts? Emily observed the buck step into the uncertain wild as it hesitated no more. "What lies ahead?" she whispered, both for the animal and herself, realizing the question echoed in the depths of her being. New challenges, uncharted territories awaited, testing her newfound confidence. As the rumbling clouds began to disperse, an overwhelming sense of purpose washed over her. And just as she turned back to Matthew, prepared for the next step in her journey, the storm shifted once again, hinting at an upheaval that threatened to redefine her path, leaving her teetering on the edge of newfound confidence and insidious doubts. Was she truly prepared for what awaited her next? As the last remnants of the storm faded, Emily felt both a weightless liberation and an unsettling tension beneath it. The air, once heavy with rain, now felt charged with an electric promise, a threshold looming just beyond her line of sight. She sought Matthew's gaze, desperate for reassurance, but found only a mirror reflecting uncertainty. "Did you feel that? It was like the buck knew I wasn't just trying to help. It was a shared moment," she spoke, her voice a mere whisper tinged with disbelief. "It was incredible," Matthew agreed, stepping closer, his expression brimming with admiration. But Emily didn't miss the slight furrow in his brow, a reflection of her own lingering concerns. "But you did something more than just release it. You connected with it." Her heart soared at his words, yet weighed down by the implications. What did connection mean in a world that often felt so disconnected? She had been so focused on the immediacy of the rescue that she had dismissed the deeper questions tugging at her consciousness. The weight of her own expectations pressed against her, a reminder of the career she had forged that now felt like a tightrope walk between confidence and fear. "Do you think I can do this? Do this with other animals? With other people?" she asked, half breathless, half terrified. "You just did it," he replied firmly, leaning against the battered truck as if that sturdy foundation could bolster her wavering spirit. "That was you. Your strength came through. It didn't come from a textbook, it was instinctual." Emily closed her eyes, recalling the buck's wild eyes and how within chaos she found clarity. The internal conflict roared within her. Confidence and self-doubt seemed to engage in a relentless tussle. Was it really instinct, or merely a flash of borrowed courage from the moment? The urgency to transform her revelations into actions began to manifest as she opened her eyes. "There are more out there, more animals in need. I have to get back to the clinic," she declared, her voice firmer now, though still jittery with the shock of her own resolve. "Emily, I'm all in," Matthew said, his enthusiasm shining through. "Let's not just react. Let's develop a plan on how you can channel this instinct into your practice." His words ignited a spark within her anew. It was one thing to confront her fears in the wild, but could she translate that into her day-to-day work? She envisioned her clinic teeming with life, not just a medical facility, but a sanctuary where these encounters birthed real change, for her, for the animals, for the community she had kept at arm's length. "Imagine the workshops," she breathed, her thoughts racing. "Teaching others how to observe and empathize. to heal through connection. But just as her mind filled with potential, trepidation snaked around the edges of her exhilaration. Would her approach be ridiculed? Would she be seen as a misguided dreamer? Or worse, a flawed practitioner, unable to compartmentalize her emotions? Let's give them something to talk about then. Matthew grinned, a cheeky challenge written across his face. Are you ready to make that leap? She hesitated. The prospect of exposing herself to scrutiny, to judgment, sent ripples of anxiety through her. Yet, there it was again. The wave of determination, the realization that the path to growth demanded risk, both personally and professionally. I am, Emily finally asserted, solidifying her decision. But I can't do this alone. As they drove away from the site of the storm's chaos, she clenched her hands tightly around the steering wheel, an embodiment of newfound energy. Somewhere amid her resolve and apprehension, the awareness struck her that she was on the cusp of something transformative, teetering between reckless ambition and essential self-discovery. And deep inside, the roar of the storm, both outside and within, echoed her own fears, yet it whispered a promise. This journey was only just beginning. What awaited when she broke through the confines of her own limitations and fully embraced her calling? The wonder of the unknown loomed larger as she pushed forward, eager yet apprehensive. How would she navigate the imminent at the clinic? The next step of her evolution. The clinic loomed ahead, its lights cutting through the encroaching dusk like beacons of hope. Emily's heart raced, not from fear, but from the burgeoning sense of purpose that swelled within her. This was it. This was the place where she would integrate her newfound instincts into her professional life. Yet, with each passing moment, she felt the weight of expectation pressing down, a tangible reminder of the scrutiny that awaited her. As they entered through the clinical-hued doors, a familiar melange of antiseptic and fur enveloped her. The vibrancy she'd envisioned felt elusive. The sterile reality of the clinic reminded her of an environment steeped in routine. She glanced at the veterinary technicians who bustled about, their faces etched with the fatigue of long hours yet unfaltering in their dedication. A part of her felt an overwhelming urge to share her recent revelation, to coax them into her vision of a rejuvenated practice. But self-doubt lingered like a shadow, whispering that her ideas might be greeted with skepticism. "Let's gather the staff for a meeting," Matthew suggested, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to her internal storm. "Other perspectives could help shape your vision." The idea sent a jolt of anxiety through her. What if they laughed? What if the courage it took to voice her aspirations turned into ridicule? Yet confronting that fear felt monumental. It was a reflection of the risk she needed to embrace. "Okay," she nodded slowly, each word heavy with determination. The meeting room stood stark and glaring, an altar of vulnerability where she had to expose not just her professional ambitions, but also the raw, visceral instincts that had sprung forth during the rescue. As Matthew called the team to order, Emily's breathing steadied, drawing on the memory of the buck's wild eyes. She spoke, her once tentative voice gathering strength with every word. "I want to create workshops," she began, her gaze sweeping across faces that ranged from curious to skeptical. "Workshops that teach empathy and connection in our practice, not just techniques and procedures." A murmur rippled through the room. Emily caught snippets of conversation, the technologist's casual doubt, the seasoned vet's cautious intrigue. But as she laid out her ideas, detailing how interactions with animals could guide their emotional engagement with clients, the initial whispers softened, morphing into a deeper discussion. Matthew chimed in seamlessly, providing insights that augmented her passion with practicality. "And think of the impact this could have," he presented. "Imagine pet owners feeling empowered to address their animals' needs, not merely as patients in a clinic, but as participants in their healing journey." The weight of her proposal paradoxically lightened as the team engaged, asking questions that wove in their own experiences and fears. By sharing their stories, the staff unveiled a shared vulnerability, a common thread in their dedication to animal welfare. With each shared anecdote and open dialogue about emotional encounters, both joyful and painful, Emily recognized how fragile yet resilient their profession truly was. A surge of exhilaration caught her off guard as she absorbed the earnestness of their responses and the passion blooming within her own chest. Here, in this sterile room, she planted the first seeds of collaborative growth. But just as enthusiasm blossomed, an undercurrent of anxiety returned. What if she was pushing this too far, too fast? This idea could work, Emily, one of the newer techs admitted tentatively, excitement sparking in her eyes. But challenging the status quo can feel risky. We need to be prepared for resistance, internally and externally. Emily understood the truth in that statement. The looming presence of the past clung to her like a fog. She hadn't just been faced with external doubts, she had battled her own inner critic, an unkind voice that prophesied failure. "Then let's build a plan," she asserted, her resolve palpable. "We'll anticipate those challenges together." Once the meeting adjourned, a sense of accomplishment blended with lingering unease. Emily's ideas began to crystallize into something real, a movement towards change, yet doubts flickered at the edges. What if the backlash was more formidable than she imagined? What if her colleagues struggled with the philosophy she was eager to embrace? Standing in the staff kitchen later, her fingers danced nervously over the edge of a coffee mug as she stewed in her thoughts. Just then, Matthew's voice broke through her spiral. "What are you thinking, really?" She glanced up, and the directness of his gaze pierced through her apprehension. "I'm scared, honestly. But scared isn't the same thing as being unable to follow through." "That's right. Fear can mean growth, if you're willing to confront it," he replied, a knowing smile curling on his lips. Taking a deep breath, she steeled herself for the road ahead. The next chapter of her journey awaited, cultivated from the seeds she had planted today. What obstacles would she encounter as she sought to cultivate her vision, and would she have the strength to face them head-on? The following morning, a drizzle hung in the air, transforming the clinic's exterior into an impassioned watercolor of gray and green. Emily arrived early, the uncertainty still buzzing in her veins like a live wire. She leaned against the cold metal of her car, projecting strength she was still trying to cultivate. Each raindrop echoed her trepidation. Today might hold the first significant test of her newfound resolve. As she stepped into the clinic, the familiar aroma of animal care filled her lungs. The sight of her colleagues already immersed in their routines stoked the embers of doubt again. She hesitated at the threshold, grappling with the potential silence that could follow her next words. What if they dismissed her? Was this truly the right path? Matthew approached, his expression warm and encouraging. "Ready to put one foot in front of the other?" "I hope so," she replied, feeling both vulnerable and determined. The day ahead loomed as a crucial point of transition, not just for her vision but for how she would navigate the rocky terrain of professional relationships. As the morning progressed, she carefully observed the interactions among staff members. Conversations pivoted from serious to light-hearted, but the discussions about animals took on a mechanical tone. They clicked through procedures, often neglecting the emotional ties inherent in their work. That mechanicality hung like a curtain, and Emily knew she had to open it to let the warmth in. After morning rounds, she found herself gathering the team once more. This time she sought more than just words. She needed to foster engagement. "Can we brainstorm together about how to implement the workshops?" she proposed. Something in her demeanor, perhaps the urgency that edged her tone, aroused their attention. Olivia, a soft-spoken tech, raised an eyebrow. "I thought we had enough on our plates right now. Our schedules are packed." The doubt rolled over Emily like waves crashing against a rocky shore. "I get that. But what if we took a small step first? Maybe start with a 10-minute exercise after staff meetings on how to engage with clients." The initial reluctance shifted slightly. They exchanged glances, assessing the viability of the proposal. Emily's heart raced, thinking about the risk of confrontation should they reject her again. Yet, she felt compelled to press on. Connecting with clients means understanding their pets on a deeper level. If we don't cultivate that mindfulness, we lose something essential. A moment passed, heavy with anticipation. "I'd like to try that," said Jonah, the senior vet, his voice carrying an unexpected weight of authority. "But let's ensure it doesn't detract from our core responsibilities. We're already stretched thin." Relief mixed with caution. Emily nodded, ensuring her excitement didn't overpower their valid concerns. We'll design the activities to be efficient and effective. No lengthy time commitments. The initial sparks of collaboration flickered to life. They began to brainstorm ideas, simple exercises that would promote dialogue and empathy. Emily found herself swept up in the momentum, noting how sharing their thoughts about challenging cases opened avenues for deeper connections both with clients and themselves. But the core of her discomfort hadn't dissipated entirely. What if Jonah's hesitancy was indicative of a larger reluctance to embrace change? What if her colleagues ultimately concluded that the old ways were satisfactory, just as they stood? She left the meeting room energized yet unnerved. Later, as she scrubbed out the remnants of the morning, her mind resisted replaying her evolving vision. Instead, it cycled through critics, internal and external, of every slice of vulnerability she had just laid out on the table. "That was impressive," Matthew's voice echoed, breaking through her thoughts. "You held your ground, even when faced with doubt." Still, she turned away from him slightly, wanting to absorb the compliment but overwhelmed by the contrast she felt. But did I really do enough? Engagement is just the beginning, isn't it? What if it fizzles without follow-through? Matthew leaned against the sink beside her. "The important thing is you initiated the conversation. You challenged the status quo. Growth doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow burn." He was right, but the concept of complacency nagged at her. Would they truly follow through? And what if she pushed the boundaries too far, too quickly? In that moment, Emily recognized the pressure to ensure her vision's success rested on her shoulders. The courage she had mustered would need to be tempered with patience and strategy going forward. Would the plan they had started galvanize enough support to withstand any challenges? More importantly, would they maintain the momentum to evolve? As she considered these questions, her mind raced with possibilities. Resolute, Emily set two intentions in her heart: to focus on cultivating trust among her colleagues and to embrace every challenge ahead. Today marked the beginning of the journey, but the path would soon reveal its obstacles. Just before leaving for the day, an email notification chimed from her phone. The subject line sent a shiver down her spine. "Feedback request. Proposed workshop." She hesitated, staring at the screen, knowing that whatever awaited her could either bolster or shatter her confidence. In that moment, Emily faced a choice: to dig in deeper and confront any potential backlash, or retreat back into her shell. Would she rise to the occasion, or would vulnerability be her undoing? The weight of the decision settled into the pit of her stomach as she clicked to open the email, bracing herself for whatever lay in store. Emily's heart raced as she opened the email, the anticipation morphing into a palpable tension in her chest. The message unfolded like a thin layer of fog, concealing clarity while hinting at uncertainty. She braced herself before reading the words. "We appreciate your initiative, but we have some concerns regarding your proposed workshop." The criticisms came in a flurry of bullet points: concerns about timing, workload, and the implications on their clinical duties. Each line hit her with the weight of disbelief. How could they be so dismissive? Hadn't she just summoned courage to raise the issue? As she processed the feedback, Emily felt a churning sense of insecurity rise within her, like a storm gathering strength. She had been so wrapped up in her vision for a more engaged clinic that she hadn't anticipated the risk of rejection. The thought of returning to her colleagues with the feedback stung, igniting a fire of determination within her. There was only one way to respond: to turn this critique into an opportunity for dialogue. Later that afternoon, she approached Matthew, feeling a renewed urgency. "I need to discuss the feedback on the workshop proposal," she said, her voice steady, but revealing a tremor beneath. "I'm considering asking for a follow-up meeting with the team to address their concerns directly." Matthew raised an eyebrow, respect shimmering in his eyes. "That's a smart move, but be prepared. Change is often met with resistance, and the team has their comfort zones." "It's not just about comfort zones, it's about what we can be," Emily asserted, the fire fueling her words. "I need them to see potential, not pitfalls." Taking a deep breath, she steeled herself for the conversation. As she gathered her team again in the conference room, The air felt thick with unspoken words. Each glimmer of resolve faltered in the face of criticism. She clutched a notepad tightly, the edges biting into her palm as she positioned herself at the front. I appreciate your written feedback and understand the concerns. I genuinely want us to explore avenues for improving our relationships with clients, she began, her voice measured yet passionate. However, I want to know more about your hesitations. Let's talk. Tentative glances passed around the room, the silence pregnant with uncertainty. Jonah shifted in his seat, his expression a mix of consideration and skepticism. I think we all want the same thing, but we don't have time for extra initiatives. We could easily sink under pressure. Emily felt a spark of frustration ignite within her. What if those very initiatives led to a healthier dynamic with clients? She countered, leaning forward. What if small changes eased our workload instead of adding to it? This time, Olivia spoke up. I've noticed that clients sometimes feel disconnected, but are we really ready to put in that effort when we're already overwhelmed? Emily's resolve deepened. Yes, we are. Every small connection we make can mitigate stress for both us and the clients. Imagine the long-term benefits. The back and forth felt almost like a dance, measured, cautious, yet alive with possibility. She could sense the team's apprehension slowly shifting. They, too, were beginning to see the potential in the small exercises she proposed. Questions led to ideas, and the conversation started transforming into tangible solutions rather than an impasse. As they discussed strategies, Emily felt herself unlocking a new layer of leadership. Each time a colleague waved a potential roadblock away, she countered with a solution, bolstered by the understanding that constructive dialogue was essential. The room filled with the friendly banter of shared thoughts and strategies, sparking a palpable energy. Yet, as the meeting approached its close, Emily sensed a lingering resistance simmer towards the edges of their collective enthusiasm. Jonah's furrowed brow hinted at deeper anxieties. His skepticism had not fully dissipated. But what if this simply becomes another thing we start but can't follow through on? He pressed. In that moment, Emily realized the conversation had not just tested her leadership, but it had also flayed her vulnerability wide open. Feelings of self-doubt crept back in, threatening to overshadow the strides they had made. Was she truly capable of ushering this change? I believe we can keep the momentum up, she asserted, even as uncertainty prickled at her confidence. But it requires commitment from all of us. Let's set benchmarks to measure our progress together. As they dispersed, Emily felt a mixture of exhilaration and apprehension. They had begun a journey, but would their newfound enthusiasm endure past this initial spark? That evening, as the clinic hummed to a close, she sat at her desk, her thoughts heavy with the complexities of collective endeavor. How could she maintain their commitment? What would happen if they faltered? With every ounce of clarity molding into a new realization, Emily set her mind to craft a follow-up strategy, determined to uphold her vision regardless of doubt. Just then, another email alert chimed, catching her off guard. Its subject a chilling reminder. Urgent. Addressing team resistance. She hesitated, the weight of the unknown anchoring her thoughts once again. Would she be equipped to confront opposition head-on, or would she find herself overwhelmed by the very doubts she sought to dismantle? The moment of truth loomed ahead, propelling her into a fray she knew could redefine her journey. Emily awoke to the soft morning light filtering through the clinic windows, a soothing glow contrasting with the storm she had navigated the previous day. The uncertainty still lingered, but beneath the veil of anxiety was a burgeoning resolve. She had awakened not merely as Emily, the veterinarian, but as a leader, one who had learned to embrace doubt, transforming anxiety into action. The team's meeting had shifted something fundamental within her, igniting a spark of shared purpose. As she entered the clinic, the familiar cacophony of barks and meows enveloped her. Today wasn't just another day. It was the start of a new chapter, one where each small initiative could forge connections and elevate their practice. Determined to transform the positive vibes from the meeting into tangible actions, Emily initiated targeted strategies from the feedback. Over the next few days, she collaborated with her colleagues, developing mini workshops that brought practical changes. Each interaction became a celebration, allowing the staff to channel their collective emotions into overcoming the bureaucratic barriers that had stymied their efforts for years. By the end of the week, Emily stood before the team once more. "Look at how far we've come," she said, gesturing toward a whiteboard filled with observational notes inspired by their engaging discussions. "We've transformed skepticism into strategy." The group buzzed with renewed energy, demonstrating their newfound commitment in the organic flow of dialogue. 2 technicians had taken it upon themselves to draft a series of engaging client brochures based on the workshop techniques they had developed. Jonah, who had been the most resistant, now contributed with heartfelt passion, sharing ideas about incorporating play therapy for stressed animals. Their unity reflected Emily's own growth. She had not just championed change, but cultivated an environment where every voice mattered. As weeks stretched into months, the clinic began to morph alchemically. Clients who once felt like mere numbers were now participants in their animals' healing journeys. They engaged with newfound vitality. And with each positive outcome, Emily felt the triumphant swell of achievement. She had infused the space with compassion, transforming the sterile halls into an empathic oasis brimming with life. Recognition from the community followed as if propelled by the energy they generated together. An article in the local news highlighted the clinic's new approach, applauding their innovative methods of incorporating emotional connection alongside traditional treatments. Emily basked in this acknowledgement, feeling the pride surge through her, not just for herself, but for her team as well. They had broken down barriers, and it had paved the way for legitimate success in their endeavors. Yet amidst this success, challenges would ebb and flow like the tides, reminding her that evolution was a continuous journey. One afternoon, an emergency case arrived, an injured wild animal, much like the buck that had sparked her transformation. Emily felt the familiar apprehension bubble up, but this time it was different. She had forged her path. She would rise to meet this challenge head-on. As preparations began, memories of that fateful storm flickered in her mind. "We've got this," she encouraged herself as she gathered her colleagues, each face reflecting her own sense of purpose and shared belief in their mission. This time, as they stood shoulder to shoulder, Emily knew they were a cohesive unit, ready to confront the uncertainties together. The operation was arduous, but the synergy in their work was palpable. Each member played a critical part. As they successfully stabilized the animal, Emily felt a wave of pride wash over her. No moment in her journey had been solitary. Every step forward was not just her victory, but a testament to what a united team could achieve. When the injured animal was finally released back into the wild, she stepped back, heart swelling with gratitude. It was a powerful reaffirmation of what she stood for: preserving life, fostering connection, and nurturing growth. In that calm after the storm, as the sun cast a warm glow across the clinic, Emily embraced the full spectrum of her journey. She had confronted fear, unlocked hidden strengths, and transformed her practice in ways she never thought possible. Emily had emerged as a skilled practitioner and as a beacon of change. She had proven to herself that every voice mattered, that compassion could coexist with expertise, and that embracing the unknown could yield results beyond measure. Those days of doubt had forged not just resilience, but profound fulfillment and dedication to her noble mission of healing. Emily closed the clinic for the day with a newfound confidence that felt both exhilarating and grounding, eager for what awaited. She would continue forging ahead, knowing that together, every storm could be weathered, every challenge met, and every humble soul, furry or otherwise, could find a champion willing to stand for them. This was her moment, and she was ready for whatever came next. Now is the time to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you won't miss exclusive emotional stories like this one. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure these powerful narratives reach those who need to hear them. Comment your reactions and theories about this finale. Your voice matters just as Emily discovered hers. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's inspire others to embrace their own journeys of transformation.